Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in, shall we? Today, we're going to look at the world through a pretty unique lens. We are actually going to examine how the mechanics of suspense, literally the exact same techniques used in documentary filmmaking to keep you glued to your seat, perfectly map onto three honestly astonishing real-world events. Whether we're talking about history or modern current affairs, the architecture of a thriller is happening all around us.
To really understand this, we got to look at the master of suspense himself, Alfred Hitchcock. His famous bomb theory essentially proves that true suspense relies entirely on withholding key information. Think about it. A surprise is just a brief 15-second explosion, but suspense? Suspense is knowing something the characters don't. And what's truly fascinating here is that this isn't just some clever movie trick. This is a concept that governments, militaries, and global elites use constantly in the real world. They hold the information, and well, we're left in the dark.
Now, what's super interesting is how universal these rules actually are. Documentary filmmakers rely on 7 specific elements to craft a gripping narrative. You need strong characters, a profound conflict, careful pacing, incredibly high stakes, uncertainty and unpredictability, atmosphere, and of course, foreshadowing. So we are going to use this exact framework today to decode 3 incredible, heavily documented true stories of hidden information and extreme stakes.
Okay, let's move to our first case study and see how this all builds. Because, what happens when that metaphorical bomb under the table isn't just a plot device, but an actual, classified military operation drafted by the highest-ranking military officers in the United States?
Case Study 1, Fabricating a Cold War Pretext. The hidden plot of Operation Northwoods.
So, picture this. It's the absolute height of the Cold War, and the U.S. Department of Defense drafts Operation Northwoods. This was a top-secret plan driven by massive physical stakes to justify war against Fidel Castro's Cuba by literally staging acts of terrorism and blaming them on the Cuban government. It brilliantly illustrates the pacing and conflict of a political thriller. Just look at this timeline. In February 1962, pretexts for intervention are requested. By March 13th, General Lemnitzer presents this explosive plan to Secretary of Defense Robert McNamara. Then, just 3 days later, President John F. Kennedy bluntly rejects the use of military force, effectively shutting the whole thing down. The American public was the audience, sitting at the table, completely unaware of the bomb ticking underneath them, until these documents were finally declassified decades later in 1997.
The suspense here totally lies in the shocking unpredictability of the proposed steps. The Joint Chiefs didn't just suggest minor skirmishes. No, they proposed faking an attack on the Guantanamo Bay base, staging terror campaigns in Miami and Washington, D.C., and even fabricating the shoot-down of a U.S. Air Force fighter jet. They even drafted something called Operation Dirty Trick, which was this absurdly high-stakes proposal to blame Cuba if astronaut John Glenn's Mercury spaceflight happened to crash. The gap between what the government knew and what the public knew was just absolutely immense.
But withholding information isn't just a military tactic. Let's shift gears for a second and explore what happens when philosophical and moral stakes are tested by the global elite, not on a battlefield, but right inside the global banking system.
Case Study 2, The Global Financial Thriller, The Panama Papers and the Illusion of Secrecy.
Back in 2015, an anonymous whistleblower known only as John Doe leaked an absolute mountain of data from the Panamanian law firm Mossack Fonseca. And in doing so, this single source shattered an unassailable web of financial secrecy that had protected the world's most powerful people for decades. The sheer scale of this leak was staggering. We're talking 2.6 terabytes of data exposing 200,000 offshore shell companies. To put that into perspective, this wasn't just a few wealthy people avoiding taxes. This was a massive shadow economy used by dictators, oligarchs, and fraudsters to hide their illicit wealth from public scrutiny and law enforcement.
And in a surprisingly ridiculous twist, which, by the way, is a great element of suspense, that unexpected detail, the firm actually used childhood aliases like Winnie the Pooh and Harry Potter to conceal the identities of their dubious clients. Seriously, we're talking about associates of Vladimir Putin and Bashar al-Assad, utilizing cartoon bear monikers to launder money and hide assets. It honestly sounds like a work of fiction, but it was pulled directly from the firm's internal emails.
The fallout was basically the climax of our second thriller. It triggered this massive global shift. Prime ministers in Iceland and Pakistan were literally forced from office. It prompted the creation of Ultimate Beneficial Owner, or UBO registries, and even pushed the U.S. to pass the Corporate Transparency Act. However, the conflict definitely isn't over.
Actually, scratch that, it's still raging. Many of these transparency laws are currently facing a rollback, following the 2024 acquittals of the firm's founders in Panama. So that battle between the elite's desire for secrecy and the public's need for transparency, it's far from settled.
All right, so from hidden military files to hidden financial data, we now move to a modern mystery where the information void is literally our own airspace. This brings us to our final and perhaps most mysterious case study.
Case Study 3. The Unexplained Aerial Enigma. The 2021 DNI Report on UAPs.
In June of 2021, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence released a preliminary assessment on unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAPs. This was a massive watershed moment because it officially acknowledged incidents that military aviators had been witnessing and kind of whispering about for years. Grounding this whole mystery in official reality, this intelligence assessment examined 144 military reports of UAPs between 2004 and 2021. And what makes this so incredibly compelling is that 80 of these incidents were detected across multiple, highly reliable military sensors. Radar, infrared, visual observation, these weren't just tricks of the light, folks.
But what's really fascinating here is the human element, the internal conflict. The suspense of this narrative is completely heightened by sociocultural stigmas. As the report details, military aviators previously faced heavy disparagement and serious reputational risks just for reporting what they saw. The pilots were the characters under pressure, basically holding onto a secret that the broader culture flat out refused to look at.
Now, to try and resolve this uncertainty, the report proposes 5 explanatory categories for these phenomena: airborne clutter, natural atmospheric phenomena, U.S. developmental programs, foreign adversary systems, and a catch-all other bin. But here is the real punchline of this entire intelligence effort so far. Out of those 144 reports, they could only confidently identify exactly one single object. Yep, and it was a large, deflating balloon. As for the rest, still a total mystery.
But the true climax of this intelligence thriller lies in 18 specific incidents. In these cases, UAPs seemingly demonstrated highly advanced technologies. We're talking about objects remaining perfectly stationary in hurricane-force winds aloft, maneuvering abruptly, and traveling at considerable speeds without any discernible means of propulsion. This is the ultimate cliffhanger. It poses a massive national security question, and the stakes, quite literally, could not be higher. Revealing the hidden truth. The ongoing battle between secrecy and transparency.
So whether we're analyzing the pacing of a documentary film, reading declassified military files from the Cold War, digging through offshore bank accounts, or parsing intelligence reports about unexplained aerial encounters, the mechanics are exactly the same. Suspense relies entirely on the gap between what is known and what is intentionally hidden. As we've seen through these incredible source documents today, the battle for transparency is very much an ongoing struggle, and it leaves us with a final, pretty provocative talk to take away from this explainer. If the greatest tension in our world comes from the information that powerful institutions withhold from the public, what other hidden truths are shaping our world right now without our knowledge? What other bombs are ticking under the table? Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.
Welcome to